So thank you so much for joining me here today. And so my main objectives, is also for you to connect with each other. So we will have some breakout room time and a little bit of time for you to kind of use your extended abstract thinking to think about this. And we're going to use the whakatauki to build understanding of our values in the classroom, because that's something, and then it's maybe something you'll want to share with your students as well. So you may have heard both whakatauki and whakatauki, and you may know the difference, you may not. How English, Western Pākehā views of what that is it's a proverb. I mean, that's one way to say what they are. They have a deeper meaning to Maori, but if you're from a biblical, historical background, then it is about how you might view the proverbs in that way, the capital P proverbs. Whakatauki are sayings where the person who first said it is not known. So they're not attributed to a person. And the whakatauki are when the first person who said it is known, and then we want to attribute it to that person. And in general, these are things that embody the values, wisdom, wit, and common sense of tangata whenua. So they use symbolism and metaphor to convey key messages, and they often, I'll say, come in two parts. So sometimes for emphasis, sometimes for comparison, and ours for our learning area does come in two parts. So I said there that they're a metaphor. And I know we're not English teachers, so I thought I might spend 2 seconds and remind you what a metaphor is. Do you have a favorite metaphor? If you think about metaphors and you have a favorite one, you could share it with others in the chat. While I'm just briefly talking about a metaphor is a figure of speech, describes an object or action in a way that is not literally true. So you have to read meaning into it, and it helps explain an idea or make a comparison. In general, those are what we use metaphors for. So has anybody posted in a favorite metaphor? I didn't see any pop up. I'll just tell you one I really like. You are the apple of my eye. So I'm not literally telling you that you're an apple or that you're in my eye, so it's the interpretation, and it's a description of a person there. So it's something that's not literally true, but it's a figure of speech. And this is one of the reasons that when we see whakatauki and whakatauki, often people don't like giving a translation of it, because the translation doesn't lead to its deeper meaning and understanding. And so that's part of what I want to do today, is lead to that, how we can interpret it, how we can take it. So our learning area, whakatauki, it's in the front part of the curriculum. In the 2007 New Zealand curriculum is where it first appeared in the English version. But what's so nice about this whakatauki is it derives from the original Marotanga Pangaro. So when they developed the first curriculum in Te Reo Maori in 92 to 95, they came up with this whakatauki for the Pangaro subject. So they then gifted that to us in the English. We're the only learning area, I'm pretty sure, that's how we got our whakatauki. So that's kind of a special connection for us to that first Te Reo curriculum, Te Reo Maori curriculum. So our learning area, whakatauki, ke hopu tōringa ki te aka taiapa ingari kia mo ki te aka matua. So, thinking about this, if we put that English translation in there that we so often see with it, cling to the main vine, not the loose vine, that's not a literal translation of what it says. So in a second, I'm going to be asking you to try your hand at translating it and think about what a translation would look like. So if you don't have any Te Reo Maori, that's going to be okay. We're just going to pick a few words to think about translating, and then I can bring that in. If we have some fluent Maori speakers, they might have a different view of it. Because one of the things about words is that words have lots of different meanings, right? And so, this whakatauki is made up of different words, and it's how you put those words together depends on how you're going to interpret them. So, yeah, when you read it as a fluent speaker of Maori, then it might mean something different than when we're taking a translation. And I don't know, somebody might want to type it into Google Translate, and you'll see the translation there, which is also not the same one. So we can talk about those. So we're going to put you into great breakout rooms. Maybe we'll do about 3 breakout rooms, Robin or Jared, whoever's doing this. So
how many do you want in a room? 5?
4 or 5 people in a room.
6 breakout rooms.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I was looking at the chat versus the participation numbers. Sorry. Yep. And if you'll, use your cameras and take a picture so you have the whakatauki with you. And I've highlighted some key words in there to look up. The hopu. What's the hopu mean? You might look up ringa if you don't know that. Lots of us already know that because you see it in the washroom sometimes because it talks about washing your ringa. So ringa is hand. Kite aka taipa. So look up aka and taipa. And then we have that aka again in the second part and the matua. So look up matua and mo. So hopu and mo have 2 different, they're related but different meanings. And we have that repeated aka that you should look up, and taipa and matua. So I'm going to send you to, to aka, the official Maori dictionary that's so nice and friendly to use. And in your group, you can pick which words you're looking up and share those with each other. And notice that each word has multiple ways you could translate it, right? So in context, then it's going to depend, but we can use possibly other words, other meanings of that same word to think about how could that expand our thinking of this. So we're going to then just talk to each other and explain how you would interpret what it's saying and how that might relate to your teaching of maths and stats. So, and again, this is exactly what we do with those subject expert groups to start out before going into which maths we think is most important to put into those learning matrices for year 11, 12, and 13. Start with thinking about what is important to us, and using this metaphor to help build in and think about what's important to our teaching and learning. So I'm going to send you off to the breakout rooms. I hope you have really good conversations with each other and looking those words up. And then when we come back, hopefully you can share some of that with me. And I'll share some of what the subject expert groups came up with, but also I'll share some other things that hopefully you find useful. So we'll break off now. Oops, you're muted, Robin, sorry.
Sorry, how long in the breakout room?
This meeting is being recorded.
Thank you so much for doing that. You may want to put yourself back on mute. So welcome back. Hopefully you found that a little bit enlightening and saw how different it is than it is to just look at an English translation. And that's not really a direct translation, but it's trying to give a little bit of the idea. So hopu, when you looked up hopu, we see that hopu means to seize or capture, which to me, hopu has a real active idea rather than that cling. Whereas mo is the cling in the second part of it, and it's carry, take up, bring, grasp. So grasp rather than cling maybe is, what I like better. But hopu is this whole seize idea. You might have noticed as well that there's no not in this sentence really. So, and so that the first half is saying sees grass with toringa. So if you have some Te Reo Maori, you might know that the toe, when we have the toe in front of there, that's the singular. If it was just o ringa, it would be both hands, right? So it's saying seize or capture with one hand the loose root. So the aka are your vines or your roots. And I have this nice picture here of one of my friends took out tramping, showing how, you know, New Zealand has these amazing vines that climb up our trees. So the aka are the vines. And so the tie-up of aka is how they've translated it to be the loose vine. There's probably a whole interesting history lesson you could do there with the tie-up, because if you look, when you look up tie-up, that's also, you know, that's the wood that's used for the fence or the palisades. It also can mean the hang down, the hang loose. But if you took it as, you know, thinking about the palisades, there's a Radio New Zealand podcast on history, the New Zealand wars, and it talks about how the Maori came up with their palisade fences, that they made them so that they had a lot of flex to them, and they kept a lot of the cannonballs and the bullets from coming through because they had so much flex. So when I saw that, then I'm like thinking, oh, so it's that tie-up, it's, you know, they're making it out of those thick vines, and that's what gave it, so, you know, that's what protected them. So we can also think of that aka tie-up as kind of creating a protective place. So you know, one of my interpretations of that first part is, you know, hopu toringa, so grasping with my one hand the possibly loose vines or the vines that are there on the outer protecting me while I'm out experimenting. And then engari, but otherwise we're holding on to the kia mo. So the mo, grasping the akamatua. And the akamatua is the main vine, right? It's adult matua, adult grown-up main. So akamatua is the main vine. So I'm grasping onto the main vine while I'm using my other hand to maybe experiment and look and try out some other ideas. So maybe that gives you a slightly different idea of what that could mean. In a second, we're also going to look at kind of what stories this might have come out of. But is there any other translations that people have? Did anybody want to unmute themselves and share from their group?
What I take from that is you've really got to hang on to the main vine to get up the tree. And if you hang on to the loose vines, you might end up on the ground again.
That's exactly, yeah. So, but it is saying we
also means that don't get swayed by every fad that comes along. Stick to the truth of what maths is.
That's nice.
My take.
Yeah. That's a nice take. Yep. The akamatua is, yeah, the key parts of the maths and stats. Yeah. And if anybody typed it into the Google Translate, it says, don't catch your hand on the wall, but stick to the main aka. So interesting. It didn't translate that second aka, and so, yeah. So Google Translate has some issues still. And the Maori world, when you're looking at these whakatauki, you often need to think, you know, did that come from a pūrākau? Did that come from some greater story? So the pūrākau, the narratives, the traditional Maori or oral stories. So does anybody know the pūrākau that might have inspired our whakatauki? There's a couple, and I'll give you a brief example of both of them. This is a really nice example of why our local histories and our local curriculum is so important. You know, this is one of the big things that the ministry is pushing right now, is that we need to connect to our local area. And the pūrākau in each area are unique, and they tell often similar stories, but in different ways. And knowing what the version is in your local area could give you a different interpretation and connection to that whakatauki. So one of the pūrākaus is about Tāne Mahuta, and Tāne, and it's about Tāne and the baskets of knowledge. The other one is also about the baskets of knowledge. So it's just what the person is named might depend on your local iwi or hapu. So this one comes from knowledgebasket.co.nz. They have a nice description of how Tāne was climbing to the heavens to seek the baskets of knowledge, and his brother Whiro was angry about that. And they struggled for power, and Whiro tried to make Tāne's task more difficult, but the wind came along to aid Tāne, and Tāne was able to proceed and ascend and get the baskets of knowledge. So one thing that's nice about that is I've seen teachers take this and interpret it and think, oh, I could be the wind for the students. If I think of my students as trying to climb the vine, trying to ascend and trying to gather the knowledge of mathematics and statistics, then I can think of myself as the wind that's aiding them, or their classmates as the wind. Like, I can think of what's helping the process versus what's hindering it. You can also think about those things like that Whiro was putting in the way, the insects and the reptiles and the things that were attacking Tāne and making it hard. And, you know, universal design for learning is one of the other things that we're looking at with the review of achievement standards. And it's like, how can we help students over those hurdles that somebody else has put in their place that's keeping them from doing that learning? So that's one of the pūrākaus. The other pūrākau is about Tāwhaki. And so Tāne and Tāwhaki are possibly the same person, greater being, and it just depends again on your local iwi or hapu. So but there is a different version of it, and I think we have time here. I'd like to play it for you. I'll tell you a little bit about it. So this is Justice Sergio Williams, and you might have to turn your volume up when I go to the audio for this. And he's talking to the Law Commission. And the Law Commission's name is Ta'aka Matua o Te Ture. So Ture is law, but do you see there that it has the Ta'aka Matua, that main vine? So he tells the story of Tāwhaki, and I'll let Justice Joe tell it because he tells it so nicely. So yeah, stop sharing this one and share my other screen. And sharing sound. Hopefully this will work.
Tāwhaki was young, strong, and handsome. In Māori mythology, a kind of Maui figure. With his younger brother Kārihi, they decided they wanted to climb to the highest heavens to obtain knowledge from the gods. They go to a place where the vines climb into the heavens, way out of sight, kind of like Jack's beanstalk. In fact, exactly like Jack's beanstalk, except the roots are there, hanging down instead of the other way around, reflecting the fact that Tāne, who had separated the earth and the sky, had placed his feet on the sky and pushed up with his head down to separate his parents. The guardian of the vines was Tāwhaki's grandmother Whaitiri. She was blind. And as the two young men head to the vine on their great journey to find divine knowledge, she says to them, kei mau tau ringa ki te apataepa, kia mau ki te akamatua. A loose translation of this would probably be, gentlemen, choose carefully the vine that you will climb. Don't choose the poorly connected vine, choose the parent vine, te akamatua. It has strong roots and it can bear your weight. Now, Karihi, the young upstart brother, doesn't listen to the old lady because he's in a hurry to get up there and make himself a big name as the finder of divine knowledge. He rushes to the vines, grabs the wrong one, gets 3/4 of the way up, is buffeted by the wind, thrown off the vine, cast to the earth, and killed. Tāwhaki listened. He selected the parent vine and slowly and deliberately made it to the 10th heaven and brought back important celestial knowledge to the people on earth, including the knowledge of ocean voyaging that got his descendants here to Aotearoa. Now, in 1995, 9 years after Sir Owen delivered that short missive on the place of Te Ao Māori and its work, the Commission, still no doubt excited by the challenges of Te Ao Māori, chose as its Māori name that which you see in its current livery, Te Akamatua o Te Ture, the parent vine of the law, that very vine that Tāwhaki chose. And the Commission did that on purpose because it wanted to work with that image. The judges are perhaps Karihi.
So I'll pause it there. You can find that easily by searching for it, and he goes on to explain, the Law Commission and its connection, and yeah, so it's probably for very similar reasons that this whakatauki was chosen for maths and stats, and that we, think of ourselves, as Margie said, like thinking about the main vine and not getting distracted by the loose vines, but sticking with the main part, the main goals. And we also think about that when we look at it with the RAS groups. We think about what brings it all together to create that strong main vine. We think about all the parts of it that come together to create that strong vine, to allow our students to climb up to gain that knowledge. So I thought I would share with you one of those groups' interpretations. And I mean, we should acknowledge here that this is definitely, the groups have Pākehā and Pacifica and Maori members in it, but this is, this is an interpretation because it is a metaphor and we're interpreting it for our purposes. This was not the original purpose of this whakatauki, which so yeah, just keep that in mind, that this isn't the Te Ao Māori view of this whakatauki. We are putting this under the Te Ao Pāngaro world. So mathematics and statistics is a learning area which rewards a robust grounding in fundamentals before progressing to more abstract concepts and processes. This whakatauki tells us to hold the akamatua, leveraging the strength of the akamatua. We have sure footing we need to be able to reach for new concepts and keep climbing to new heights of mathematics and statistical capability. As we ascend higher with mathematics and statistics, our views change. So really thinking about what are we doing here? We're climbing up to the heavens, right? And so we're getting a different view. We're seeing things differently as we go higher. And these new perspectives offer new ways of approaching problems, not just in mathematics and statistics, but in a multitude of pathways that weave the aka of the mathematical knowledge with the vines emerging from other learning areas. So really talking about how we, maths and stats can be seen. We can help us understand other learning areas, but also we can use it in those other learning areas. So that's one interpretation. That may not be what you guys came up with in your groups. Again, if we have a few minutes here, if anybody would want to unmute or share other thoughts. Margie did such a nice job sharing. Did anybody else want to share?
Yeah, I might say a little thing. The whakatauki that I didn't really like that much, but I think after talking through it now and hearing these perspectives, I liked it a lot more. What comes to mind when you talk about these loose vines and strong ones is maybe if I was teaching fractions and I can teach them a quick trick for adding fractions, and that's probably the loose vine. It suffices for the short term, but does it build into the bigger things of equivalent fractions would be much more of a useful thing to understand later on. So that's what I'm thinking at the moment.
Thank you, Jared. That's such a great point. Yes, exactly. The tricks, we can think of those tricks that, and they just fall off. We don't remember those for the long term, rather than the key understanding that it really all fits together, you know. So it's the akanga who, you know, see maths and stats is just a bunch of separate ideas, a bunch of these separate vines, and they can't even see into where the main vine is, and they get lost in trying to remember those tricks rather than understanding we have the structure that holds our whole subject together. Great point. Anybody else want to share? Well, I really appreciate you joining me today. I mean, part of the purpose of getting you here is to give you a chance to talk to other people. So hopefully that breakout room worked well and you had a chance to share with other teachers. I know that you guys are absolutely exhausted, and it's a big deal that you took your time to be here with me this morning. So I really appreciate that, and appreciate AMA for putting this on and the hard work that they do to provide education for, you know, math and stats teachers throughout the country. So thank you, Jared. Thank you, Robin, for hosting us. And thanks everybody for joining. If you have any questions or insights or anything that you want to share with me after, I welcome it. There's my ministry email address.